Hi, this is Nadia Mendoza. I'm doing my journal article review on Yolanda Onion and her article on sociological theory of learning disabilities, understanding racial disproportionality in special education. So Onion argues that there is an overrepresentation of students of color in the educational system, and especially in special education. Um, She theorizes and explains four main theories in her article. One is social constructivism, the second is interactionalism theory, the third institutional theory, and the fourth structural theory. Social constructivism being the umbrella of all the subsequent theories. She continues to explain how society and groups identify students of color in the special education system. Just a note that when she explains in her article or when she describes students with special disabilities, are students that are identified with cognitive disabilities, like ID, intellectual disabilities, or mental retardation. She is not suggesting or using special education to identify students with physical disabilities. So that needs to be clear because when she's talking about students in the article, or when she refers to students in the special education system, she's referring to students with cognitive disabilities like behavioral problems, ID, or emotional disturbance. So as Anya starts to develop her article, she suggests that social constructivism is the main point for, or the main argument why there's an overrepresentation of students of color in our schools. She states that special education was a social construct, and that it did not exist on its own, so that there are other hierarchies of social economic wealth in our systems that have power, that develop this idea of special education to marginalize students that have a different learning style or a different learning ability. And she also continues to explain that in schools, instead of teachers obtaining the abilities, or the institutions obtaining abilities and resources to educate teachers in order to have a differential way of teaching or to meet the needs of unique students, they begin to just label students into special education, and which was her main point of the overrepresentation of students of color. So Anya continues to describe the interactional theory that applies to special education as the interaction between groups and individuals. So, for example, when there are professionals like a speech pathologist or a special education teacher in the classroom, there's this competitive force that happens because institutions promote to marginalize students of color, or just students with special education. In special education, they begin to feed into this institutionalized idea of let's just label them and let's not get better at teaching, almost. Um, so there is this discrepancy of teachers just referring students into special education rather than obtaining the tools to be able to teach them and to, what we call the gap, or close the gap of that cognitive disability. So they're quick to label students rather than give them the tools or the resources to continue on to society as a student without a label. So as Anyan continues to argue in her article, there's also underlying educational motives in institutions. So students are led to stay in the educational system as special ed students because institutions gain monetary benefits. So it is in benefit to continue to label and refer students as special education rather than to exit or not have them in special education to begin with. So overall, I believe that Anyan has a great point. I think that most of her theories lean towards the Marxist theory of hierarchy and educational or economical value. So we marginalize students in special education to maintain this hierarchy of needs within socioeconomic statuses. So I agree with Anyan on some of her points. I think she is a little extreme at some points, and she kind of comes across a little overbearing in her article, but overall I do identify myself and my way of thinking in the classroom with her Marxist views. So that is my oral presentation. I hope to discuss further in class.